Ohthere's Voyage to the White Sea. Ohthere told his lord, King Alfred, that he dwelt the farthest north of all the Norwegians. He said that he lived in the northern part of the country bordering the North Sea. Yet he told Alfred that that land extends very far to the north from that place, but it is all desolate, except that in a few places here and there the Lapps live by hunting in winter and by fishing along the shore in summer. He said that on one occasion he decided to find out how far the country extended due north, and whether anyone dwelt to the north of that desolate land. Then he went due north along the coast. For the whole journey he kept the wasteland on his starboard, and the open sea on his port, for 3 days. Then he was as far north as the whale hunters travel at their farthest. Then he still went on as far due north as he might sail in another 3 days. Then the land, or the estuary within the land, he could not determine which, turned there due east. But he knew that he waited there for a westerly and slightly northern wind, and then he sailed east along the coast as far as he might sail in 4 days. Then he had to wait there for a northerly wind, because the land, or the estuary within the land, he could not determine which, turned there due south. Then he sailed due south from there along the coast as far as he might sail in 5 days. Then a great river extends far inland. They turned inland up this river because they dared not sail beyond the river for fear of attack, since the land on the other bank of the river was well inhabited. Ohthere had not previously found any inhabited country after he had left his own home, but throughout the journey the land on his starboard was deserted apart from fishers and fowlers and hunters, and they were all Lapps, and on his port lay always the open sea. The Permians had very greatly cultivated their land, but they dared not venture therein. But the land of the Terfins was all deserted, except where hunters or fowlers or fishers dwelt. The Permians gave him much information, both of their own land and the lands that lay about them, but he might not know how true it was, because he had not seen it himself. The Lapps and the Permians speak, as it seemed to him, virtually one language. Most all of Ohthere went thither, in addition to exploring the land, for walruses, because they have very fine bones in their tusks. They brought some tusks to King Alfred, and their hides are good for ship's cables. This sea beast is much smaller than other sea beasts. It is no longer than 7 ells long. But in his own country is the best whaling. They are 48 ells long, and the greatest are 50 ells long. He said that with 5 companions he killed 60 in 2 days. Ohthere was a very wealthy man in those possessions in which their wealth consists, that is, in wild animals. Yet he had, when he came to visit King Alfred, 600 beasts unsold. They call these beasts reindeer. 6 of them were trained as decoys. They were highly prized among the Lapps because with them they capture wild reindeer. Ohthere was among the foremost men of that land, yet he did not have more than 20 head of cattle, and 20 sheep, and 20 pigs. And the little that he plowed by horses. But their revenue is greatest in the tribute which the Lapps pay to them. That tribute consists of the skins of animals, and the feathers of birds, and the bones of whales, and in ship's cables, which are made from the skins of whales and seals. A man of the highest rank has to contribute the skins of 15 martens, and 5 reindeer, and 1 bear, and 40 bushels of feathers, and a tunic made of bear skin or otter skin, and 2 ship's cables. Both must be 60 ells long. They must be made either of whale skin or of seal skin. Ohthere said that the land of the Norwegians was very long and very narrow. All that a man might graze or plow lay along the coast, and even so it was in some places very rocky, and wild moors lie to the east of and above the cultivated land. In these moors dwell the Lapps, and the cultivated land is widest in an eastward direction, and always the more northerly it is, the more narrow it becomes. Eastwards it may be 60 miles wide or a little wider, and in the middle 30 miles wide or a little wider. And in the north, where it is most narrow, he says that it might be 3 miles wide up to the moor, and thereafter the moor is in some places so wide that a man may cross it in 2 weeks, and in other places so wide that a man may cross it in 6 days. Then alongside that land towards the south, on the other side of the moor, is Sweden until it meets that land in the north, and alongside that land towards the north is the land of the Finns. Sometimes the Finns harry the Norwegians across the moor, sometimes the Norwegians harry the Finns. And there are very great freshwater lakes throughout the moors, and the Finns carry their boats overland onto these lakes and thence attack the Norwegians. They have very small and portable boats. Ohthere said that the region in which he lived is called Halogaland. He said that no one lived to the north of him. Then there is one port to the south of the region which is called Skirringeshiel. He says that a man might sail thither in a month if he camped at night and had each day a favorable wind, and all this time he should sail along the coast. And on his starboard he passes first Iceland, and then the islands that lie between Iceland and this land, and then this land lasts until he comes to Skirringeshiel. And throughout the journey Norway lies on his port side. To the south of Skirringeshiel the great Baltic Sea flows inland. It is broader than anyone may see across, and Jutland lies opposite on the other side, and then Zealand. This sea extends many hundreds of miles into the surrounding lands. And he says that in 5 days he sailed from Skirringeshiel to the port called Hedeby. It is sited between the lands of the Wends and the Saxons and Angles, and it pays tribute to Denmark. When he sailed thither from Skirringeshiel, Denmark was on his port, and the open sea on his starboard for 3 days. And then, for the 2 days before he came to the port of Hedeby, on his starboard lay Jutland and Zealand and many islands. In these lands the English lived before they came hither across the sea. And for those 2 days the island which pays tribute to Denmark was on his port side. Wulfstan's visit to Estonia. Wulfstan said that he went from Hedeby, that he reached Trousseau in 7 days and nights, the ship running under sail for the whole journey. Windland lay on his starboard, and on his port lay Langeland and Laland and Falster and Skane, and all these lands pay tribute to Denmark. And then the land of the Burgundians lay on our port, and they have a king themselves. Then after Bornholm Island we came to these lands, which are called first of all Blekinge and Moray and Oland and Gotland, on our port, and these lands pay tribute to the Swedes. And Windland lay on our starboard for the whole journey up to the mouth of the Vistula. This Vistula is a very great river, and it divides Whitland and Windland. And this Whitland belongs to the Estonians, and the Vistula flows out of Windland and enters the lake at Zalev Vislane. And the water of Zalev Vislane is at least 15 miles wide. Then the Elbing flows from the east into Zalev Vislane, from the lake on the shore of which Trousseau stands, and they flow seawards together into Zalev Vislane. The Elbing from the east from Estonia, and the Vistula from the south from Windland. And then the Vistula robs the Elbing of its name, and flows out of the lake northwestward into the sea. Therefore they call it the mouth of the Vistula. Estonia is very large, and there are many cities, and in each city is a king, and there is much honey and fishing. And the king and the most powerful men drink mare's milk, and the poor men and the thralls drink mead. There is very great strife between one king and another, and there is no ale brewed among the Estonians, but there is plenty of mead. And there is a custom among the Estonians that when a man is dead, he lies uncremated inside the house with his kinsmen and relatives for a month, or sometimes 2, and the kings and other men of high rank so much the longer as they have the greater riches, sometimes half a year, during which time they are uncremated and lie above earth in their houses. And all the time that they lie inside, there shall be drinking games until the day that they cremate him. Then on that same day that they intend to bear him to the pyre, they distribute his possessions, whatever remains after the drinking and the games, into 5 or 6 lots, sometimes into more, according to the amount of property. Then they deposit it, the largest lot about 1 mile from the settlement, then the second largest, then the third largest, until it is all deposited within the 1 mile. And the smallest lot shall be nearest the settlement where the dead man lived. Then all the men who own the swiftest horses in the land shall be assembled about 5 or 6 miles from that property. Then they all gallop towards that property. Then the man who has the swiftest horse comes to the first lot and to the largest, and so one after another until it is all won. And he wins the smallest lot who rides to the property nearest the settlement. And then each one rides on his way with the property, and they are permitted to have it all, and for this reason swift horses are extraordinarily precious there. And when his goods are thus completely distributed, then the dead man is carried out and cremated with his weapons and his clothing, and very often they consume all his wealth by the long laying out of the dead man inside the house, and strangers gallop up and win that which they distribute along the way. And it is a custom among the Estonians that the men of each tribe shall be cremated, and if one bone is found unburned there, they have to atone for it greatly. And among the Estonians there is a tribe which knows how to embalm in ice, and therefore the dead men lie there so long and do not putrefy, because they embalm them in ice. And even though one put 2 vessels full of ale or water, they bring it about that both are frozen over, whether it is summer or winter.